Hello everyone. Welcome to ManageEngine's webinar on scaling enterprise IT operations for the new normal.
Team, thank you everyone for taking time out in the morning. The thought process, what we are trying to do here is we will quickly go over how we are trying to do the zero touch monitoring using ManageEngine tools. The intention basically is not just only to look at the deployment per se, but overall share some experience on what we had in executing the role of SI, and take you through some of the learnings which we had, and try to give some insights. Okay, what's it to the next slide, please? Yeah, so first thing first, I work with Bitlocksoft. Bitlocksoft software company is part of that bigger Birla group which we have, and most of the logos which you see here are pretty well known in at least in the Indian territory, where Orient Electrics and Birla Hospitals are kind of the famous names which we have. Then we know Bits Pilani. So those are some of the key things, and we belong to the same group of the organizations. Okay. And what we do at Bitlocksoft is in the next slide, Varsha, is at Bitlocksoft what we have done is, where is this experience coming from, what we are talking about, right? The experience which we are going to share today is running this iSight platform. And being an SI and working with multiple companies across the globe, what it has taught us is everybody sees these tools as something, of their own thought process. And it becomes very, very difficult for you to put some best practices around. There are engineers who are looking at this data, but overall, the operations perspective and then making sure that everybody sees it in the same way is slightly difficult. So what we came up with is the iSight platform, which is more of this best practices in action. So we don't focus on the capability. Capability comes from the vendors or the providers like ManageEngine, but we focus on the applicability of that best practices to the customers which we onboard. And there are gamut of operations which we do, like be it a service desk, be it cloud management, be it security management, desktop centrals pieces, everything and thing is available on the platform. So today we'll be looking more into ITOM engine and what we had challenges and how did we scale up or manage it. Okay, that being said, what's it? We can move to the next one. I think we have a poll, right? Do you want to run the poll?
Yes, I'll run the poll.
So the poll, basically is about understanding the audience who is connected over how are they looking at, or how is their organization looking at monitoring? Because our experience, right, collective experience tells that everybody starts somewhere and everybody thinks that they are somewhere else, right? So this whole idea of everyone seeing it in the same way is something which we need to solve in the monitoring landscape. Okay, and that is something which the poll is all about, like what kind of audience we have, so that we can touch base upon few of the points. Then next one also, I think, does it go same at once?
No, we are in the second poll. We are in the second poll. I'll launch third one now.
Okay, so what I see is the poll results talk about mostly they are focused on infra part of it, and some of them are actually going towards that 10% is somewhere around application monitoring, and 10% a little bit further in the stack. Mostly, okay. That is fine. I think so. We have collective poll results. We can start the second one poll version.
Yes. I've started the polls.
Okay. And probably the slide also we need to adjust this. Right. So what do we see here? So mostly this is 75%. Okay. 85 to 92 is decent. If you guys are above 92, superb. I think you have done something great there. How much time does it take? Few days. Yeah. See the results, they speak of themselves, right? We are somewhere between 50% of the people trying to do it. It takes some days for them to bring the systems under monitoring. Makes sense. And then and the questions, guys, the thing which we have is about understanding the current monitoring state. What the reason you could see probably a breakup as 85 to 90%, 92%, and then greater than 92, because it is very, very difficult, and we all agree that going beyond 95 is something you have to put all that effort in making it run, and that has its own challenges and investments associated with that. So what I see the results, they kind of match to what my expectations were. We will most of us, we will be in the A and B sections of it. Some of us, we are in the 85% also. Some, how do we notify customer? Email, chat. That, yeah, auto ticketing still is very minimal, but yes, that is something which is also matching. And then slightly over 50%. Okay, so I think what we can summarize for all of us, right? If you go to the first previous slide version, we can summarize quickly about the results which we saw. Is right. So most of us, like 60% of us, said that we are into infra availability and performance monitoring part of it. Some of them have scaled beyond that and gone into the application performance, and then additional 10% into the automated deployment monitoring and all. Most of us are still in the hosted, internally hosted. The SI partners and SaaS platforms are probably under evaluation, but that's how we see it. The people who are there, they are mostly mix of both, like 60-70% of the people are analysts, so we could look at that also. Okay, the next result, Varsha, of the next poll is most of us, what we see. Next slide. Yeah, so 50 to 75% is the biggest chunk, and then there are some of the people who are in the 85 to 90%, and I really congratulate them, because that is the harder place where you have to be consistently, but that is the expectation. Okay, and still most of the people in the deployment part, it takes few days for them to get them onboarded, and mostly emails, auto ticketing is something still there, so very few. And then slightly over 55% is the automated overall monitoring touchpoint. So we could say there is a 40% of the chances to see what we are talking about today. Okay, so I think the polls are understood and we have discussed it. We can move on to the next slide. For sure. So the thought process, is where we are right now, and you saw some of the questions, the poll questions were also associated to make sure that we understand where we are, and some of the questions were associated with that. Where we should be, right? Where we should be as in the zero touch automation, or the topic of this concept. We'll break down it a little bit, and then how to get there with the existing tools, and how to maintain the coverage. There are few tidbits which we will share, and then we will quickly spare some 5 minutes on what is happening and how we what at least my reading of how the tools or the monitoring landscape is going to transform in coming few years. Okay, so that's something. You could keep putting your questions in chat, and we can take them as they come in once I complete. Okay, next slide, Vasha. Right. So as you all know, right, we should first measure if you want to change it. And what we realized is whenever we spoke to customers for the first time, they all said like, yeah, we have monitoring. But as I think you all would have experienced, it is monitoring always is given a second thought, right? It's the last thing on the item to be done. The things are changing a little bit with the cloud and other things, but still there is a lot of legacy environment, a lot of mindset transformation which we need to do on a overall basis for our ITOM community to evolve, right? So what we came up is there has to be a evaluation criteria, right? To how do we really evaluate where the customers' current environment stands, and then take some actions and show them the metrics or the improvement as we go along. So we just made them in that merit index. Okay, so what does it do is first is what do you really monitor, like the questions which I asked. Are you only looking at infrastructure? Are you looking at application component? If you're looking at application component, how deep you go? Do you really monitor logs of that? How are you monitoring the events which are coming up? Are you really monitoring only the alerts? Are you taking only on the alerts, or are you really working on the events which are happening through the environment? So those kind of some questionnaires and daily in the monthly or annual index we keep, so that we understand and we can capture where we are and where we should be, and how aligned we are to the growth which is happening. The second point is obviously the engagement of operation. Email, as you all know, email is one of the best, most used technology even today. But is email the best thing? Can email do everything? No. And then there are those auto ticketing and tracking and making sure that there are those API calls, saying statuses. By the time people see the email, probably the event has already cleared up. So those all things collectively, kind of analyzes how do you engage the operational teams. Do you really have a team sitting in looking at the eyes on the glass kind of mechanism? So all those aspects also we do evaluate. And there is efficiency index for everything what we do, and then we adjust it over a period of time so that some of them scale up, some of them scale down, and we achieve what we have striven to about the zero touch monitoring component. How are you actually resolving what has been broken, right? Are you really doing some auto actions through features? Have you integrated with the orchestration platform, or are you running some actions? Are they operator initiated actions? So those all things is how do you resolve it, right? And this first 3 points is mostly what we have heard about, right? But what we have seen is there is increasing in interest into something like AI ops driven analytics based platforms, where if a CPU is actually down, like let's say it shouldn't be down, but it is down today based on the data which the monitoring teams have collected, it is anomaly detection, and people will kind of the AI ML based platforms will alert you that there's something wrong with the tool and all. So those what are those kind of platforms? Are there any correlations which we normally don't see it, but they are happening in the event, right? So those are the platforms which we have to evaluate, and we do consider them in the merit index. And the last point is basically how do you transform this observability? And I think if you guys have heard the term SRE, the slide reliability engineering, that the observability of that point has kind of picked up from there, is the overall the systems are becoming more distributed. Systems have to stay up, and you saw what happened to Facebook and WhatsApp a day before yesterday, right? So those kind of put back the priority to the monitoring part of it. And do you really think they don't have monitoring? They do have, but there was some area which was missed, and that area is how you evaluate these things. Okay, so this gives you a stand of where you are. It is a collective set of questions, and we evaluate them. These are evaluation parameters. which we do it on an ongoing basis to capture the performance and the complete monitoring suite or the tool suite which we have. Okay, moving on, WhatsApp to the next slide. Okay, so where we must be, right? And you guys will agree, probably most of us really don't want to do repetitive things, right? And not only the human aspect to it, there is also the time consuming aspect and the error aspect to it, right? Human error aspect to it. What happens is, if you keep doing same thing, probably you will get distracted by some other priority issues and things will go back. So in today's world, or the distributed environment we are sitting, or if you just see what we are doing, imagine this message, the WhatsApp message which you send, and the tick doesn't come. The message has been received, but the tick doesn't come. It will increase your agitation. It will increase the way you see it. Probably, you will blame network and all that, just behind that one tick. So what is happening is, such kind of things is very prone, and the consumption of such technologies in our day-to-day life has changed the way we should see, uh, or changed the way customers are expecting from the monitoring landscape also. So what we have to do is, we have to bridge that gap and make sure that we bring that service agility. And to achieve that, we also need to transform the operation along with it. When you do those two things together, is when we can actually achieve the zero touch monitoring. You should really never spend time in doing such things. Okay, so it has to be completely automated end to end. Only then we could spin up the monitoring like the minute the server gets onboarded and all. Okay, so this is the TM forum inspired, because they are doing this. All our phone calls today are going to network function virtualization, and that network function virtualization is all driven completely with zero touch automation. Okay, so that orchestration and combination, and driving your operations with that orchestration and automation piece, is what will give us that service agility in coming days. Okay, moving on. Now, whatever we spoke, right, is all GAN, but how do you actually do it? So, in Bitlocksoft, and there was one of my seniors who told me this, that a tool is always going to be a tool, right? It is you who have to utilize the tool to do what you really want to do, and that is why we should 100% figure out where we have to go, and then how we are going to set the path for it. And how do we do that ISET platform which you saw there in the first slide? Is we use OpManager for our infra monitoring, all components around that, then SAP monitoring, additional things also we do it. There are some add-ons which you have put. We have application manager from ManageEngine, which does services, load balancers, databases, be it Oracle or SQL, and all those deep parameters which are available from ManageEngine. We do use that. The OpUtil is a feature which is an add-on, right? You just install that OpManager. It comes in, but I think you have to pick up the extra licenses of that. But it helps you in doing the switch port mapping, discoveries, and backups and other things. Okay. For the ticketing or for auto action, we use ManageEngine workflows, which have really helped us well in executing auto actions when things happen. And not only that, we have extensively customized the auto ticketing. What we have done is, our approach is more like you do auto ticketing. So nobody actually looks at the alert console for us. And we are running it for multiple customers. So looking at console is something like it's a waste of time, is what we believe. So we push most of those things in the auto ticketing mechanism. We have done some customization to make sure that we have those permutation combination available for us, so that the number of tickets is apt enough and appropriately prioritized. We also use internal reporting which comes in OpManager. Along with that, we have some custom made reports in analytics. So that is also something which we use extensively. Okay. So net, how to get there is something which we have to evolve, right? The tools can do it. Every tool has its own limitation. Every tool has its core capability. If we expose it enough, no, if we nurture it enough, every tool can give you those features. You should be a little bit ready with some scripting, some API calls. So you should have that understanding. You should be able to get it through. Okay. Next slide, Varsha. Right. So this is one live example which I wanted to share with you guys is how we maintain the coverage in our environment with ITOM and all, right? So first thing first is we in the SDB portal, what we did is the asset management. We restricted onboarding of devices directly to ITOM. So we do have a change management. Everything gets routed to change management. Once you have approved change, you implement that change, so the device gets into the product in the wild, in the actual network. The remote AI actually detects that and it circles back into the asset explorer, right? So the change management has a task to the asset manager, and the asset explorer detects that device coming in through this through the scan. So then he confirms when is the right time for the auto onboarding, because what the challenges which we saw is probably if you with the auto monitoring, the question comes is you are alerting too soon or too late, right? So both of the questions were coming. So what we did is we tied that with the status of asset. We will not monitor unless and until it goes into in use state or something. So what we did, we integrated that. So once the device is added to in use state, we push it to ITOM for monitoring, so that we add that for the discovery. So once it gets discovered, we all know the device profiles, they do get applied. If it is the components which come additional, the additional modules of NFA and NCM, so they do get added if it is the criticality of the device is there, or if it is of type firewall, right? So or if we really want to monitor the some of the flows and all, so that is the flow which we capture, and then the data which comes in, and then auto alerting which happens in the flow. So the rest of the system, once the device is onboarded, the profiles are applied. The remaining things of alerting and all that, they get inherited to that. So net, if you see it, only asset manager touches the logical asset, the asset when it comes into the system. Otherwise, everything in this piece is automated for us, and it has saved us a lot of time and also got some more visibility. So we are among that 92 plus range of the monitoring coverage. Okay. Um, is it all ME? Yes, it is all ME. Is it all out of box? No, we have done some customization so that we can pull and share this data between the tools. Okay. So moving on, Varsha, to the next one. Okay. So there was one other thing, right? Why we did the way we did, right? The one major problem which we saw is we always the monitoring scope, right, is always a moving target. And when it is a moving target, what happens is you should really know what is live on your network. And with the current security issues and the vendors getting qualified, disqualified, like Huawei and all, it is becoming a challenge for us to maintain that visibility, because everything cannot be monitored and everything cannot come through monitoring. So what we did is we use combination of IPAM for the utility which comes in, additional module which comes in ManageEngine, right? OpManager is to scan the networks, and we also added the routers to MAC address mapping. And these two combinations, no, they detect us the rogue devices, the devices which are not supposed to be, right? So there is like classification of those MAC addresses or the ranges where we have already decommissioned. So those are the areas which kind of detected. We have auto alerting; those are taken on higher priority. So this is something has helped us in trimming down. And there is one. There are a couple of customers who are under Telecom Act 88 from US, where Huawei is not supposed to be in the IT networks, right? So that we have successfully managed to make sure that we comply to those limitations or government norms by using this tool. So that's how collectively we are able to match this through this IPAM, MAC address, ARP caches, which comes as additional modules in OPUT. Question to the next slide. So probably this is the last slide, guys. If I'm too fast, what we are seeing is the monitoring which we had in a traditional way, where server was the main asset, right? Server has lost its identity per se because of this Docker, Kubernetes, and all these things. So everything is moving distributed, and VMs might not exist in a couple of years to come, right? So what is happening is every component is smaller, 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 and smaller, right? So how do you really track it in the environment? So the monitoring landscape or the perception which we had to look from the server side of it or from the infra side of it will slowly fade away. There would be the question will remain, but the question might not remain for most of us. The question will remain for the cloud providers or things or the people like that who are providing that service. But for most of all of the rest of us, the question will turn on its head and become a product based question, which means there is a service. You look at that service and see which feature of that is not working, right? It will not be like which server where that process is running and all. So that might not happen. So this whole data, the actual performance metrics and all that, they will all become metrics driven rather than a device driven. So and these metrics will flow in towards the digital product, right? And digital product economy is 100% there today. Today morning only I read somewhere that India's biggest two-wheeler company is smaller than Oyo or Ola applications, which are application driven, right? So if this you see it, there is a bigger transformation in the way things are happening or the business is happening. So this is what I meant by digital product economy. And how do they monitor it? They will obviously monitor it from the services like driver, the trips, and all that. So that is something which will collectively become that. And most of us know who are on the analyst level, you will see that DevOps there are a lot of opportunity openings in the DevOps also, and DevOps is becoming that core. Do they do differently? No, but you need to know a little bit more about how things happen behind the scene, how applications work, so that you get a gist of more than the system admin role, right? I always say that a tools person is always a mix of everything. He is a bit of tools guy, a bit of system admin, bit of application admin, and a bit of architect. So he knows everything, right? But he is not qualified, or he is not dedicated onto one section of it. So DevOps will kind of bridge that and help you push it into one more further application landscape rather than the system landscape. And these AI ops and new technologies, which are AI enabled, machine learning enabled, they will help us identify needle in the haystack much faster, much effectively in coming days to come. So that's how I see the industry trends happening, and that is pretty much what I had to share.
Now over to our next presenter, Suresh B.
Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome you all once again for the SI webinar. So Zoho and ManageEngine grew up in the southern part of California in United States. And I would call this as an anti-enterprise software company. There is a reason why I say this, because we are available in the market since 1996, and we did not allow anyone to invest on us. So generally, the startups will have good ideas and try to seek for funding from the venture capitalists. So venture capitalists lend companies money, and they try to look for return on investment in 3 to 5 years time period. So, and push you to build world-class product. So we know that it is impossible to build world-class product in within a short time period of 3 to 5 years. So we told ourselves that we wanted to focus our energy and resources towards building products that really matters. So in 1996, we built a web NMS framework, which helped the telecom companies to build network monitoring software over this NMS. So later we realized that there is a huge scope in the network domain, and we started building a network monitoring software for ourselves under ManageEngine brand, and so which is one of the product that is still available and selling. So in 2002 we started with this network monitoring software called OpManager, and since then we started building a lot of IT management softwares under ManageEngine category. So right now we have 90 plus products, including free tools under ManageEngine. And in 2005, we saw the market trends and the scope for the cloud applications. So we started building a lot of cloud application that the business requires and a lot of collaboration tools. And under Zoho, we also right now we have 45 plus applications, and this is the broader portfolio of Zoho products. So we call this as the operating system for business. So we have products for your sales department, we have products for your marketing department, we have products, several products under human resources category, we have products for your finance department, we have IT help desk softwares, we have customer service solutions, and we have IT analytics under business intelligence. And as I said, we built a lot of team collaboration tools, which came in handy during this pandemic. So during this pandemic, when all employees were sent back to work from home, and it was even easy for us because we already had these team collaboration tools like Zoho Click, which helped us to collaborate even when we are working in different location. So we were able to create channels for each and every project, and we were able to follow through, we were able to share files, we were able to connect for a quick call, and so on. And these team collaboration tools were built even 5 to 7 years before. So that is the only reason that keep us going. And Zoho Corporation is available in the market since last 25 years. So we are proud to announce that Zoho Corporation is celebrating its 25 years of journey in 2021. And there is an interesting journey, the video that's been uploaded in our website. So there's a link posted in the slide. So when you have time, you can go ahead and check this out to understand the 25 years journey of Zoho Corporation. And then this is about ManageEngine. It is a division of Zoho Corporation, and as I said, we have various products under ManageEngine, and it's been used by 180,000 organizations across 190 countries. And we have products into different categories like Active Directory monitoring, Exchange Server monitoring. We have products for Office 365, and we have various products under IT service management for help desk, asset lifecycle management, CMDB, and ITIL. And under endpoint management, we have desktop management software, OS deployment software, mobile device management software. And under IT security, we have firewall log analysis, vulnerability analysis, privileged password management. And for data visualization, we have IT analytics. Now, our focus for today is IT operations management, where we are going to cover network performance, application performance, end user experience, network change and configuration management, bandwidth and traffic management. So, with that, let's look at a real example of a bank in India. So, this is one of the largest bank in India, and this is how the IT infrastructure of the customer looks like. It has 8 data center across multiple locations with 4,000 branches across different cities in India, and it had around 12,700 active ATMs in the country. And as a result, you need to make sure that you keep monitoring these ATM servers, ATM machines, and ensure that it is able to dispense the cash without any problem, and it has the cash always available. There is also one of the the RBI has imposed a rule that any ATMs that is found with out of cash for more than 10 hours will be imposed a penalty of 10,000 rupees. So the banking sectors will need to ensure that the ATMs are functioning well. And this bank has around 235 crore customers. And imagine the transactions that's made by these customers using the online banking and mobile apps. So what is happening around the banking industry around the world? So the big banks predicts that it will need much less office space in future, and which is true. When the pandemic started in March 2020, when all employees were sent back to work from home or still working from home, and initially it was tough, but later it became easy because when when you were provided with infrastructure, when you were able to access all the services and application from working from home without any trouble, it made possible. And here are a few examples. This nationwide building society from UK had requested its 13,000 office-based staff to work from anywhere in the country. And Santander, largest financial service company in Spain, is closing its 111 branches in the next 3 months' time, and Lloyds Bank to reduce office space by about 20 percentage by 2023. So while on the one side the banks are reducing its office space, on the other side, what bank actually wants? So whether you're working, whether your employees are working from office space or whether they are working from home, you have to ensure that your customers are getting an uninterrupted service. So you need to monitor the branch offices and its availability. You need to ensure that all the ATMs are functioning, and you need to check whether all these machines are available and from a central location. And also, there is a craze for this AI powered automation tools to have a better customer experience. So you must be experiencing that you go to any website and there is a chat bot that pops up to ask you, how are you? How can I help you? And so on. So imagine if a banking sector has a feature or a product that can help you to verify the identification proof when you sell insurance online right now. And what about a tool that helps you to automate the verification using a software that reduces a great load for the employees in your organization, right? So uh, these kind of tools are very important for banks in future. And also cyber security and data protection for all the financial transactions that goes through online using your banking website. And then the IT challenges with scalability. So any enterprise that is dynamic and keep growing based on business demand and need. And as an administrator, you need to ensure that you provision for the current and the future growth as well. So you need to make sure that you have the proper licensing. When you wanted to add additional 300 servers to the network, you need to check whether you have the required license. Then you need to check whether the product is capable enough to handle another load for 300 servers. And then you need to check whether there is a hardware requirement for it. And in case if you need to procure, you need to check for the cost and implement it accordingly. And then you need to monitor the branch offices for its availability. You need to check what is the bandwidth consumption for each site, what is the bandwidth consumption by each department, and so on. And then you have a centralized management for network device configuration. You need to know what kind of changes that the devices goes through in each location. And there are challenges with scaling branch offices. So not many organizations are ready to go ahead with the traditional VPN site-to-site connection for the branch offices. So now they adopt SDWAN technology to implement the new branches. So we'll talk about that as well. So first, scalability. And so when it is identified that the load is too heavy and you wanted to distribute the load uh, uh, have the performance keep going. So you need to make sure that you split the load either by adding additional probe. That is what you do. And you need to check whether you have the limitations, whether you already reached the limitation, or if it is possible to add more probes, you can do that. But when you already reach the limitation, this is what happening right now. All the vendors are now trying to provide an option for the customers to have the probe installation being created in the same server. So you don't need to invest on hardware, but still you can do the load distribution by adding a probe installation on the same server. So even in Manage Engine, we have brought this feature. It's available in our Enterprise Edition, where you can go ahead and add additional probe installation on the same server where you already have another probe. Next, we're going to talk about is the network traffic management. So an online UPI and net banking services are down. And so this is what happens after the pandemic, when the bank did not realize that all of its customers are going to use the online banking and mobile banking to do all the transaction. So when it hit the higher volume of the transaction and it couldn't bear the load, and it started throwing errors saying that we are experiencing heavy traffic, please try again after some time, apologize for the inconvenience. So this is because of the high transaction volume that the bank could not handle, and it was not ready for such a huge load. So the bank should adopt new technologies like containers. So the container technologies that from Kubernetes, that helps you to distribute the load automatically when there is high transaction volumes happening. And when the transaction volumes are low, it is also able to cut down the containers that's being used additionally. So you're paying only for what you're going to use. So the banks should adopt technologies like that. In the meantime, you also need to look at the basics and ensure that you monitor the link stability, the link availability of each of your branch offices, monitor the brand bandwidth usage of branch offices and its departments, and identify the bandwidth hogs wherever it is applicable. And you can use tools like DPI, deep packet inspection, to know whether the cost for the bandwidth hog is whether it is because of the network or whether it is because of the application. And once you know this, you can have tools like network bandwidth traffic analysis to implement in your network, and understand what is the current QoS policies that's been implemented in your network. And if any of your critical applications been missed in adding a QoS policy, then you can go about implement it. Or if you see that any of your non-business critical applications being allocated for more bandwidth, then you can cut down a few percentage from there and ensure that you provide more percentage of bandwidth for business critical applications. Then you can use tools like the IP groups to segment the network, so you know what is the bandwidth usage of the specific group, what is the bandwidth usage of specific department or specific site, and so on. And next, the centralized management for network device configuration. So how do you manage the device configuration when you have thousands of devices like firewall, router, and switches? So how do you manage the backup? How do you identify if there are any device that's being misconfigured? And when you identify uh, a device with faulty configuration change, how do you revert that quickly to bring back the services up and running? And how do you prevent unauthorized changes? You might be having multiple administrators working along, and how do you know who is doing what change at what time, whether it is a valid change or not? And if it is going to be a valid change when it is getting executed on the device, how do you know whether these devices comply to the industry standard or not? So first thing, real-time change detection. You have tools available for configuration that manages the configuration backup. So that helps you to identify any changes happening in real time through syslog change detection. So when somebody is trying to log into your client and do configuration change and logs out, so it triggers an syslog uh, notification. So with that, we can easily identify that there is a change happened. And not only that, there are features that also allow you to roll back to the trusted version. So when you have a trusted version for a switch configuration and you do not want anyone to do any configuration changes to that device, but accidentally if somebody is trying to do a minor change and with or without the permission, and you do not want at any point of time the configuration change to be modified, rather it should have only the trusted version. So in case if accidentally a configuration change is implemented, and the system will identify that and roll back to the trusted version automatically. So you can use tools like this. And how do you prevent the unauthorized changes when you have multiple administrators working along in the change management process? And so you should use tools that has approval workflows. So an operator who's trying to do a change is sending a draft to the administrator. The administrator will review the draft and approve it. If it is a valid change, only then it goes to the device for configuration change. Otherwise, we can add comments saying that it is an invalid change or not required at this point, and reject it so that the draft goes back to the operator. So this way you can ensure that not any unauthorized changes are going to the device directly, and you know who is doing what change and what time it's being implemented. So everything is coming under the administrator for review. So what happens to these approved changes? The approved changes still go to the device. And how do you ensure whether these changes are compliant to the industry standards or not? So you should have tools that helps you identify the devices with configuration changes. It should automatically identify and list the devices that are violating the standards. You might be having some local policies. You might be having some industry standard policies that need to be complied with. So whether all these devices comply to that standards or not, it can identify and list the devices. And not only that, there are tools that can help you remediate these actions as well. So when a device is identified as violated, say you have a group of 30 devices with same configuration, where 25 are complying to standards and 5 of them, though they should have the same configuration but are not complying to the standards. So you can then associate a remediation template with the policies. So as soon as it is identified as violated, it is also going to suggest you what command can you execute to make it compliant to the industry standards. So with a single click, you can ensure that these configurations changes are made and ensure it is compliant to the industry standards. So with that, we are moving on to the next section of automation, the AI and ML-based features. So that are penetrating through all the industry, whether it is healthcare or banking industry. So as I said, you go to any website, you see a smart chatbot pops up to help you with the questions that you might have. So even for the banking industries, as I said, if they have a feature that can help them to verify the ID proofs for the insurance that's being sold online, is going to be really a great help for them. And in the networking, so Manage Engine is also taking a lot of effort to have features for AI and ML based automation features to help the administrator reduce their job. Say we have developed a feature called adaptive threshold. So how the threshold works, as Pradeep talked about a while ago. So you are going to define threshold for certain performance metrics, and when it deviates from that value, it is going to trigger an alarm. This is how it works. Imagine an environment that has thousands of devices and hundreds of network devices, imagine what is the time and effort required by administrators to complete the configurations. Imagine you have a minimum of 20 performance metrics being associated to one device, and there are thousands and hundreds of network devices that you have. So it will take at least a couple of weeks time to complete the configuration. And it doesn't end there. Say you have a daily job that antivirus scan that takes place and execute every 3 p.m. in the evening. So during that time, the administrator has to manually tweak the threshold for CPU, because during an antivirus scan, it is expected that the CPU might shoot up another 10% on the server. So during that time, the administrator need to manually tweak it. So all these are a painful process for administrators, and there are vendors that provide some predefined templates for the threshold value. So that might help you to a certain extent to configure this by reducing the initial efforts that you will put on to identify the ideal value for the performance metrics for threshold configuration. But it may not work for all the environment. It may work for one environment but may not work for other environment, because the environment is different, the load on the server is different, the application running on the server is different. So an AI and ML based adaptive threshold is the need of the hour. So how this works is, so you can simply enable the adaptive threshold feature in your network monitoring system. Once it is done, it is going to learn the pattern of each and every server that is connected to the network. So it will understand how the network is performing. So what is normal according to the server. So during 3 p.m., when an antivirus scan executes, the CPU shoots up to 10% extra, so which is considered as normal. And after an antivirus scan is completed, it is going back to its normal stage. So it is understand that this is the natural behavior of the server, and accordingly, it will define thresholds for each and every server, each and every performance metrics. And once it is done, it can also define some deviation percentage. So for any spike, it should not give me an alert. So you can set a deviation percentage of 10% from what you have. So it will automatically define thresholds, and it will wait for another 10% to get exceeded. Only then it is going to generate an alarm for you. And this is with adaptive threshold that saves a lot of time for administrators in terms of configuration. And also it is very proactive, that it is not going to alert you for daily jobs like backup or any antivirus scan. So it learns the pattern, it knows what is normal behavior of the server, even though when a backup is executed, even though when an antivirus scan is completed. Similarly, ManageEngine is also working on AI-based intelligent workflows. So as soon as a problem is identified and given identified in OpManager, how does it work? So an administrator will go about and solving that problem. Say, for example, when there is a problem identified saying that the disk is being utilized more than 85%. So if you leave that for some more time, a couple of weeks, then it might go crash. So what an administrator will do is, first he will check whether any unwanted files in recycle bins and remove it, and then he will compress all the logs that are older than 2 months. Then he will move the logs that are older than 2 years to another file server to save more space. What if the product can suggest you with a workflow to automate this process? So this is what we are working on. So as soon as the problem is identified with disk utilization, it is going to suggest you an intelligent workflow that has these flow format in it to execute and move files or compress files or delete files that are not required. So once you review this and associate that with the problem, next time when the problem is identified, it is going to execute this workflow to save the disk space for you on that server automatically. So these are the features that we are working on in terms of automation. And next, we're going to talk about the security and technology. So VMware's endpoint protection platform, VMware Carbon Black Cloud, reports the stats that there is a 38% rise in cyber attacks on banks and other financial services. So how do you protect your network from such threats? So there are the adoption of IoT devices in the banking sector are high. So it gives a better control for for the assets that are on the mortgage, especially for vehicles. So there are these IoT devices are penetrating in the banking sector. You have a lot of 4K digital signage devices, so that is used for marketing, that is used to promote any offers on the digital signage, and it requires a stable internet, right? So when you wanted to do that, you need new technologies like SD-WAN to allocate proper bandwidth for these devices, and you cannot do that with normal traditional connection. So when you have SD-WAN, you can do all the configurations on the on the go, on the cloud. And I can also give you my own example with adopting SD-WAN technology in our organization. So when the pandemic started in March 2020, when all our employees were sent back to home, after a couple of months, everyone started to requesting to open the office. That they wanted to come back, and they wanted to break the monotonous and come back to office and work. We know that it is not a safe or it is not a wise idea to gather thousands of people in one place. So we thought of an idea of implementing hub and spoke offices in southern part of India in remote villages. So right now we have around 40 hub offices in southern India. And imagine a site-to-site VPN connection is going to work. Is it a feasible solution to have a site-to-site VPN connection for all these 40 hub offices? Right now we have 40 hub offices, but maybe in 3 years it can be 250 hub offices. So it is not a feasible solution to have site-to-site VPN connection for all 250 hub offices. So we adopted a new technology called SD-WAN. So what we did is we just installed SD-WAN router in each of these hub offices, and we control that through SD-WAN cloud controller sitting in the central office. So it doesn't require any man hours to do all the configuration in each and every location. It doesn't require any MPLS connection, doesn't require any hardware piece. So it is so easy to bring in and establish VPN like connection through SD-WAN technology for the hub and spoke offices. So when you have these kind of new technologies available in the network, you also need to make sure that you have your monitoring system that supports monitoring the availability and performances of these SD-WAN devices. So with that, I would like to introduce you to OpManager Plus, which has all the capacity to do this whatever the challenges that we discussed right now. So OpManager Plus is capable of doing it, and the products that you see on the outer layer are available as a standalone product as well as modules inside OpManager. So OpManager that does the server and network monitoring. It helps you monitor your router, switches, firewall, printers, and IP cameras, and so on. It helps you identify faults, and you can use workflows to automatically fix the issues. Helps you monitor your vCenter, Hyper-V, Zen Server, NetApp, and so on. And with NetFlow Analyzer, you can do the bandwidth and traffic analysis. It uses its NetFlow exports from the router to generate reports. So you can understand the in and out traffic flow of your network to know where the traffic is coming from and where it's going to, with details such as source and destination IP addresses. And network configuration manager that is going to help you reduce the configuration error by detecting the changes in real time. And also it ensures whether you're compliant to the industry standards or not. And Firewall Analyzer is a firewall log and policy management software that helps you identify the attacks that are happening in your network, and helps you monitor the VPN traffic, the VPN trends, and also you can analyze the number of rules, what are unused rules, what are overused rules and the unused rules. If you have thousands and two thousands of unused rules in your firewall, you can remove that to improve the performance. And with OpUtils, you can do the IP address and switch port management. It can also help you detect rogue devices in your network. And with Applications Manager, you can get the code level visibility of all the components of your infrastructure. So when something goes wrong, when the application is slow, you get to know the details, like to understand whether the JavaScript is the problem, or whether the query running behind is slowing down the performance, or any media file on the web page is slowing down the performance. You can get to such details with Applications Manager. Okay, so maybe I can transfer the control now to Satya to take over the Applications Manager session for you.
So in today's agenda, we are going to see how digital transformation is happening, how organizations can achieve this digital transformation, followed by hybrid cloud monitoring. So how this hybrid cloud is split up in different stages, how you can monitor these technologies all together. And finally, we'll end up with finding out how to accelerate database performance. Now, when it comes to digital transformation, we need to accept the fact that this is not something just evolved in last 1 or 2 years, right? So the transformation is happening for the last 15, 20 years. So it is the fact that each of the organization or industry like retail or finance or banking, they are in different parts of this transformation. As my colleague Suresh mentioned before, most of the banking sectors, they would be interested in knowing about their network latency, or probably they would conduct audit on the ATMs. However, most of them, they don't check or they don't perform audit on their application, which will be used by the end users. So there are transformation happening with these industries, but they are in different levels. Now, let's see how the client server architecture was there before the digital transformation. So most of the organization before 5, 10 years, they would have a server, application, database, all in different components, and it would be connected through a network. So the infrastructure cost is way too high, and the users, with the help of internet, they have to access it, and there could be a lot of manpower involved to construct this infrastructure. And in case of any issues, the only way to find out is to directly go to the data center and find it out. This is how the client server architecture was before the digital transformation. And now how it is evolved with the evolution of 3.0 and 4.0 is something like this. So we have everything available in the cloud. So you can build your own data center or your own infrastructure in cloud. You will have the application layer, database layer, you have messaging queues, network, object storage, block storage, everything is available as separate components in cloud, which you can use to build your own infrastructure. A simple smartphone is more than enough for you to access your environment and see what is happening. With the evolution of microservices and containers, it is more simple. You need not affect the entire infrastructure to build a module. You can build that separately, and that can correlate and combine together and work. And now we are in the world of serverless model, where you actually node in a server. Without a server, the application can have a high availability, and it can move to different compute engines and make it live. So let's see how this pandemic has evolved the digital transformation across different organizations. As you know, most of the schools had become online classes with online with uh, mobile applications, and a lot of conferences had become online meetings, virtual meetings altogether. And we have the gym in the form of fitness applications or fit bands, and most of the shops are available in the form of online store. So all we need is a mobile phone with internet, right? What could be the problem over here when due to this digital transformation? So most of the organizations or company, they evolve in this way to compete in their business, but they don't know how the end user experience is all about. As an end user, my application might crash or it might slow down, which these organizations might not know on how to track it. Now, with the evolution, I had done some research and find out how these application performance had impacted some of the major industries, for example, an airline industry. I hope everyone might have read about this information and news, but I would just give you some details about this. So during March 2016, Delta's airline application went down and it created a loss of around 150 million US dollars. And in the same year, the application failure happened for British Airways, and the estimated loss was about 100 million US dollars. And we cannot forget about the Air India application that went down twice on 2018 and 2019. Some of you guys who have joined this session might be a victim of this. So the application went down for almost 6 hours and it delayed almost 150 flights. So this is how critical when it comes to application performance or application downtime, uneven downtime when it comes to web application. So there are another factors on to find out how critical this impact is all about. So when it comes to a brokerage firm, it is expected that the firm might lose 4 million in revenue per second if their electronic trading application is 5 milliseconds behind this competition. So this is how critical when it comes to applications monitoring. Now, a recent ManageEngine report says that a user would close a web page if that takes more than 4 seconds to load. So of course, no one is going to wait for a slow web page to load, right? And the same analytics was shown by Google, where it says if it takes extra 0.5 seconds to generate a web page, its traffic gets reduced by 20%. And let's not forget about the 2020 AWS application down, which is on one specific region, it was down for almost 5 hours, and the impact it created a loss for big players, even like Roku and Adobe. And finally, I would just inform about the income tax portal that we have. And I have serious respect on application developers and the testing team. So there is no complaints about them. However, let's understand the fact that it is very difficult to create a portal which will be accessed by at least 1 million of users at one specific point of time. At some point of time, the application team, they have to release the web portal. So when users are starting accessing to the portal, nobody knows what is happening inside the application. Some of the pages might get crashed. Some of them are showing exceptions. The page doesn't move. It couldn't. We are unable to download some files at some point of time. So this resulted in completely a buggy application. Now, how to handle this type of impacts? So we have something called digital experience monitoring. We call it as DEM. This is nothing but how digital fits in end user journey. A recent Gartner report says that about 40% of the companies are excited about the digitalization because it not only gives opportunities to empower these staffs, their own employees on digitalization, but they can also get better tool with better optimization or better AI powered solutions. And 39% of companies are interested in cost saving benefits. So undertaking this digital transformation increases revenue opportunities and it also improves customer satisfaction. Of course, all these transformations are created only to enhance the customer experience. So the endpoint, the customer satisfaction would be a major goal for us, and it also should decrease the cost of doing a business. Now, let's assume the scenario. You have the virtualization or cloud, you have the database available, you have the application, web server, you have the network level, and you also have the firewall in between. So you have all green tick in each of the layer, but as an end user, when I'm accessing a web page, it takes long time to load. So nobody would be able to provide an answer for this from the infrastructure level on why the end user is facing slowness. So when it comes to application team, they say that the application is fine and there is no delays. The network, there is no delays, but the end user facing slowness, and as a result, he would close the transaction and leave. Now, you would have seen this type of images in most of the management meeting. A robot is something like a team that work best together will be the faster to reach the goal. So digital experience monitoring is one such thing which enables communication with different teams, with different departments. So a recent study also says that an average cost of an employee communication and collaboration issue is about $10,000 per employee. So this is where digital transformation can help. It can allow your teams to work together in problem-solving techniques. and it also knocks down the silos between different departments. The reason being, all the data that you collect can be collaborated in one single place, and it is very easy to communicate within different departments. It also increases user satisfaction with a lot of AI-driven integrations and workflows. The end user will get 360 view of what is happening on that environment. So you can also bring all the data together with the help of APIs and a lot of integrations in place. And customers would be able to make a clear decision on the future forecasting. Now, how digital experience monitoring can be provided with the help of Applications Manager. So Gartner uses digital experience monitoring in their assessments of APM vendors as well. So this is one of the 5 dimensions of APM, where it covers the real user monitoring, application transaction monitoring and profiling, application analytics, and synthetic transaction monitoring and diagnostics. So these are the 5 pillars or 5 dimensions of APM that will be monitored by Gartner. So they provide this. So only the tool that can capable of provide these 5 dimensions would be eligible for the Magic Quadrant. So with Applications Manager, we do provide a real user monitoring, where you can monitor the real user experience, followed by application performance monitoring, and where you can track the application level transactions and the queries that are happening inside the database all in one. And we also have the synthetic transaction monitoring, which we call it as STM. So these 3 are agent-based monitoring inside our Applications Manager monitoring solution itself. All 3 combined with each other can provide a better user experience and a better business outcome as well. So this is how our Application Manager agent can track the application journey. So the agent will be installed on the application server where your web applications are hosted. So with this, you will get a topology view, a service map on how your applications are interconnected with each other. Maybe you would have your application talking to a database or a middleware or MQ or another database server or another application. So from the application team, it would be difficult for them to track how this application journey is happening. So with our Application Manager agent, the APM Insight agent, we would be able to track each and every transactions that are happening within the application and outside it, like a third-party call or HTTP call or a JDBC call. And we will be able to showcase the response time of each and every transactions that happen in between. You can also see a green check on and a red check over here, which means like these are all poor transactions on red, and you can easily go back to the table view or the graphical view to find out what are those transactions, when it happened, and how to fix. You will get a list of trace and method level analysis. So for our DevOps team, it would be a cakewalk for them when we have this information available for them. They would be able to trace it out to find where the application is causing slowness. On the other hand, this is not only on troubleshooting. So let's assume a brokerage firm. We discussed about how big the loss is all about. So we even worked with multiple brokerage firms in real time, and we found like at one single time, an hour probably, there are around 10,000 to 20,000 transactions happening for them. So how an application team can monitor all these transactions? It would be very difficult. They might have some key transactions which might affect their business on everyday basis. So what we have developed in our product is something like they can mark their key transactions. They can, even they don't need to search one by one. They can search through our product, and they can easily mark it, which are all key transactions that they need to monitor. So Application Manager provides a separate view for them. So whichever they have marked, they would be able to see it separately and find out how the response times are happening for those transactions. Now, the second component is about end user monitoring. So initially, it starts with web transaction recorder. So we discussed about synthetic transaction monitoring, right? So this is all about that. So we have a web transaction recorder that would be installed from where you would be recording these steps. So with Applications Manager, we have the end user monitoring agent, which you can install in different branch office or in different locations or in different data centers. So the agent is compatible with different browsers. Like you might have some scenarios where the application might work only with Edge or only with Chrome or only with Firefox. So we bundle all three browsers together, and you can perform the playback with any of the browsers which are compatible with that website. So we discussed a scenario about the income tax portal on how difficult it would be to perform a load check when you have around 1 million users accessing your web portal at one specific point of time. So this synthetic transaction monitoring is one such thing which can help those kind of scenarios. This is a kind of bot where you can provide an input to the agent on what should be recorded and played back. So this is nothing but a Selenium script in between where it performs each and every transactions one by one and let you know what is the page load time and the response time taken for each steps that is being performed. On the other hand, you already have an APM solution, that is APM Insight. So these transactions somehow will hit the application server. So from the application server, it would be easy for your application team to find out the transactions and is there are any exceptions or error that happened during that specific point of time. So you can get a 360-degree view of what is exactly happening inside your application. Even before it is going live, you can create a load test with multiple agents which are intended to perform multiple actions, and you can get an information from the APM Insight to view which components are slowing down, what kind of database queries are executed on each transactions, which queries are slowing down, which are taking more time to execute. So those information you would be able to get it through our end user monitoring using synthetic transaction monitoring. And the next component is real user monitor. Let's not forget about the real user who is performing these activities on the other end. So real user monitoring is something like we will provide a JS script for you. So in your web application, each of your HTML files, you have to inject that JS script. So this script, what it does, whenever users are performing some transaction, it would get injected and it would be able to capture these transactions on live. Maybe you would get the device detail on from which devices the users are performing these operations, or from which browser they are performing these operations, or what is the time taken for each and every step which they have performed. You will be able to see that from a real user end. Now, this is mainly used by a front-end development team where the application front-end, the HTML file, when it loads, what type of errors or exceptions are happening. Is there any JavaScript error which is happening on the other end? They would be able to find out. And the architecture is very simple. So the JS script will be injected in the web application. That will be done from the application team. And when users are accessing, the data would be collected in the real user monitoring agent. So all three things that we have discussed today, they are all agent-based modules. And this agent doesn't have a database to store the data. It somehow connects with the applications manager with HTTPS connection. It will store the data over here. So applications manager as a single tool can provide you the APM solution. It can also do the synthetic transaction monitoring, and it also performs the real user monitoring. So you will get a complete full stack monitoring with one single solution, and to see what is exactly happening in the infrastructure or in the real user, or you can also mimic a user transaction without actually happening from the end user level. And some of the components or JavaScript would be like this. This is how the script would look like. You have to just load the script in your application, and the components that can be monitored would be an AJAX calls. If you have any JavaScript error, that you will be able to find out. And number of user sessions on whole, web pages that were loaded during this actions, device types. Is it going to be a mobile phone or tablets or laptops or desktops? From which devices they have accessed your web application, we would be able to show that to you. And the browsers, is it going to be a Firefox, Chrome, Edge? From which browsers these operations have taken place, and the service provider information. And you might have developed your web application to cover a specific set of audience in different geographical location. So with a real user monitoring, you would be able to find out these information, like from which country or from which locations, how many transactions have taken place. That we would be able to pinpoint and show it to you in our RUM monitoring, real user monitoring. I'll just go to our product UI, which is demo.appmanager.com. Of course, you would be able to access this site from your end as well. And I'm just going to log in as administrator. I'll just show you some information about the APM, EUM, and the RUM components. So when it comes to APM Insight, so as I said, we have multiple agents available. So the technology supported would be Java, .NET, .NET Core, .NET Desktop or service-based applications. We have agents available for Node.js, PHP, or Ruby on Rails-based application. So this is the overview page of our APM Insight, where you will be able to see the overall average response time, throughput, number of errors, and exceptions. I'm just going into one of the monitor page over here. And as you can see, the transactions, these are live transactions that are happening on the end user level. And for each transactions, we will provide an app score, which is purely based on the response time of each and every transactions. And whichever transactions had error or exceptions, you would be able to find it separately over here. And we also track the database query through our APM Insight agent itself. So there is no agent required on the database level. So the agent bundles with several JDBC drivers using which we can show the database level information. And then a list of trays, which you can see the method level or a code level analysis over here. So you can see where the slowness actually happened. Is it because of a poor code or the database is causing the slowness while executing the query? You can even separately see the query level information over here. And when it comes to Java-based monitoring, we show the JVM metrics as well. JVM CPU usage, memory usage, garbage collection detail that we can show over here. And a list of exceptions. This is a kind of a dashboard that you will get. So you can see the list of error codes and exceptions that are happened in your web application. Let's not forget that this is just for a period of time and 1 hour. You can also customize your range and find out what went wrong over a certain period. And then the service map, which I just explained on how to track communication with different applications. It's a kind of topology view, and we also have a thread dump readily available. So if you feel like you want to generate an on-demand thread profiling at any point of time, you can generate it and see the threads that are actually taken place in your application. So this is APM Insight. And we also have the real user monitoring available inside the application manager as well. So if you feel like anyone needs to test this or evaluate real user monitoring or APM or end user monitoring agent, we will have a one-on-one session at the end of this webinar. You can raise your request and we will be able to provide an installer specifically with RUM loaded. You can use it for 30 days of free evaluation period, and you can let us know your feedback on how it is actually helping you in tracking the real user experience. So this is RUM. So the agent would store this information, like where the geographical based region, which location had high response time, average scores, page views of different locations it can capture, and service provider detail. This is just a demo site, and this is my local machine, actually my local application manager. So I'm accessing it from my office, so it doesn't have more ISP details over here. But in real life scenario, if you have a web application and you very well know that you will have users accessing at different parts of the world, you will get a holistic information on what is actually happening. The different browsers involved in the transactions, device types. And finally, you can also see the AJAX calls or JavaScript error that taken place during this transaction. So this is the DEM which we offer, that is digital experience monitoring, which is a combination of applications managers, APM Insight, end user monitoring, and synthetic transaction monitoring. So let's go back to the presentation. And the next topic for today would be hybrid cloud monitoring, how these components are evolving together. So if you ask me what is hybrid, hybrid is nothing but a combination of different components that are interconnected with each other to solve specific purpose. So when it comes to hybrid cloud, the combination could be a non-cloud, it can be an on-premise. You might have a private cloud environment where multiple organizations might save their sensitive information, right? So they don't want to save those information on a public cloud platform. So they can use this private cloud as an option. So public cloud, we have a lot of vendors available when it comes to public cloud, where the resources are scalable. So in case if they need a certain demand, they can very well go with the public cloud option. And recently, we also see multi-cloud platforms that are emerging. So multi-cloud is something like it restricts you in a vendor lock-in. For example, you have different providers like AWS, Azure, or GCP, OCI, which you can utilize altogether. So vendor lock-in is something like you need not depend on AWS or Azure. You can try multiple cloud providers for different infrastructure components, which is multi-cloud. The problem is it doesn't interact or integrate with each other. Some of the data might intersect, but not on the whole like hybrid cloud. Now, Gartner says that most of the organizations are planning to migrate their database by 2022 to a cloud platform. So 75% of the organizations are planning to migrate their databases to cloud platform. This is mainly because the cloud platform provides high availability. So most of them are provided as servers. So if the service goes down in one computer engine, it automatically starts in another engine. So there is always high availability option, and it is always scalable as we see. What are the benefits of having a cloud strategy? So something like a flexibility and option, like adapting the hybrid cloud, your business can continue in meeting your existing need. Like you might have a traditional infrastructure which you cannot move or which you cannot degrade. However, you have all the options to evaluate a cloud platform. You can have a public or private platform to meet your smaller expectation. However, most of your data would be in your on-prem infrastructure. So flexibility is always there. There is no questions about data migration. Almost all providers provides easy migrations option. And when it comes to a dynamic workload, so it not only allows company to scale the resources, it also eliminates the need to make massive capital expenditures to handle a short spike in demand. Let's say that you need to save your sensitive data at one point of time. No need to clean up or free up your local resources. You always have an option in private cloud where you can store your sensitive data. So automation, so we discussed about AI, ML techniques, integrations, and APIs. It is readily available. Storage is not a question when it comes to cloud providers. However, there are certain challenges which we face on every day when it comes to cloud monitoring. So there are some concepts like new level of metrics. So when it comes to a normal on-premise server, you would be monitoring metrics like CPU or memory or disk drive monitoring. But when it comes to cloud, the entire concept is overtaken by DTU. However, you might not need to monitor the CPU or memory all the time. Of course, your environment would be shifting and scaling, so it will automatically increase. But some cases, you need to monitor the network interface traffic, in and out traffic, and disk I/O that is currently happening on your EC2 machines. And capacity planning would be another question. So you might purchase your cloud resources. The infrastructure is not yours. So you might not know how the shift and scale happening in future. You might not have a proper forecast on how you can meet the demand in next 2 years or 3 years. And finally, the hybrid model. So most of the monitoring solution might not be a full stack monitoring. So they would have either hybrid, or they would have a private cloud monitoring, or some components inside public cloud monitoring. So providing or finding a solution with all three in one would be a difficult task for any organization. So with Applications Manager, we not only provide you the digital experience monitoring, along with that, you can also see how your cloud applications are performing. So we give you a full stack monitoring altogether. So with App Manager, we can monitor your AWS, Microsoft Azure, GCP, OCI, Kubernetes, Docker, containers, OpenStack, and OpenShift. So these are completely agentless monitoring. The previous one we saw on DEM is about agent-based. However, these are agentless monitoring. We use a lot of APIs provided by these providers to collect the data. So whichever data is visible, we would be able to collect from these cloud providers. Now, the final topic for today would be how to accelerate database performance. So when it comes to database performance, you need solutions. Of course, a monitoring tool is required to find the database performance on day-to-day activity. So the tool should not be a reactive tool, it should be a proactive tool. So it should tell you before even the incident is going to happen. So my colleague Suresh told about the evolution of ML and adaptive thresholds. So you need to find a solution which has the ML capabilities with adaptive guidelines as well. So as he said, if you have an antivirus scan, at that point of time, the machine might use high CPU or memory usage. So it should understand or adjust its baseline accordingly. And you should be able to compare a specific weeks or month data with current day data and find out what is the upper limit and lower limit of specific attributes. So that is one important thing. And next one is about disaster recovery strategies. So when it comes to disaster recovery, a lot of organizations would have their own principles of maintaining downtime. So in case of industrial standard, if you ask me, it is acceptable that the database can be down for at least 1 or 2 hours, considering there could be some patching activities that might happen. However, we need to make sure the log file and the data file in between is safe and secure. Proper backup technologies have been implemented, and you need to make sure the backup is taken and it is complete backup. There is no damages on the backup. So that is one important thing which you need to monitor. Always make sure that your backup is alive and it is a recent backup, not a kind of old backup. And every time you need to make sure in case of the database crashes or it corrupts, the backup is the only way to recover it. And avoid manual monitoring altogether. You need to do automation. No more manual monitoring involved when it comes to database performance monitoring. So Gartner predicts that the cost of network downtime is around $5,600 per minute. So we worry about uneven downtime that is happening inside the database or application. And also the performance is one major factor which we need to monitor. So when it comes to high availability, in terms of database server, there are 3 main concepts. So which involves database mirroring. So database mirroring is something like, so you would have a principal server followed by a failover replica, and these two will be monitored by a witness server. So the witness server role is to monitor the role change in between the primary to a failover replica. And when it comes to replication, so this replication will be performed by multiple replication agents. So the agent would be responsible to move the data file and log file from primary to failover. And when it comes to SQL cluster, you always have an option of always on availability. So whichever is your critical database, you would be able to move that in your failover node. So when the database goes down, it will automatically switch back to the available node. So for one primary replica, you can have 8 secondary replica to the max. So that is how high availability works. So with Applications Manager, you would be able to monitor the SQL mirroring. You can see the primary, failover, and witness status over here. Any kind of synchronization error when it goes to asynchronous mode or data loss, Application Manager would trigger an alarm notification readily for you. And then we have the replication monitoring, as I said. So this will be performed by multiple replication agents. So we monitor each and every agents and the current status and the current role of each and every status, each and every agents. And when it comes to always on availability, so there are 2 main concepts on this. One is like sync lag and redo lag. So sync lag is nothing but RPO, that is estimated data loss. And redo lag is nothing but RTO, that is estimated time to recovery. So it is nothing but the catch-up time taken by the secondary replica to catch up with the primary replica. So these are some critical metrics that you need to monitor when it comes to database availability, and proper reporting and alarm notification is always needed when it comes to monitoring. Now, we discussed about availability on how Applications Manager can deliver it to you. When it comes to database performance, one thing is something like the database might be slow. We might not know what is happening. So there are some reasons on why the database might be slow, which is because of SQL logs. There could be a lot of requests being overloaded at one specific point of time, multiple sessions. You might not know why these many sessions are initiated. You don't have an overview on from which machines, from which users these sessions are initiated. And we also have SQL logs in place. Some of the sessions might be in log, which you might not know when it is going to release or how to clean that up. The next comes the memory usage. So SQL memory would be used when you have lot of slow running queries in the database. There could be a lot of backup jobs that is utilizing the memory of the server, and buffer management is one such thing. There could be a lot of new users who are querying the database for new data. So the cache is nowhere a question over here. When you have a lot of queries which are collecting new data, of course the buffer management would go low, and a lot of page reads and writes happening in database servers. And finally, we cannot ignore the server capacity over here, because that is the base of all of them. So proper capacity planning or forecast management won't be there. So the organization might not be able to forecast or understand how the data file or log file will grow in next 6 months or 1 year period. And there could be a high disk IO happening on the server, which might cause your database to run slow. Now, with our AI-powered applications manager, we would be able to show the SQL performance in detail. We not only show that performance in terms of metrics, we also show the query level information, like which query is actually slowing down your applications, or which is executing across which database, or the frequently executed queries, most blocked queries, which queries are using more CPU at specific point of time. You would be able to see it. We also have a custom period option. Let's assume that you're coming back to work after a weekend, and you need to find out the queries are causing slowness during your holidays or weekends. You always have an option of a custom period where you can go back and find out the query information with our monitoring tool itself. Now, we discussed about high availability and also the techniques involved in how to capture the performance issues. Let's understand how to troubleshoot some of the SQL issues. So when it comes to troubleshooting, if you ask me, there are some traditional approaches which are being in place, something like executing queries or in a stored procedure and find out why there is a slowness. The same activity which we have seen can be done through manual approach by executing a query and finding out the list of queries which are slowing down or causing slowness. And a recent survey says that about 27% of the SQL administrators uses SQL logs to find out where is the issue, which type of errors or exceptions are happening on the database. So with SQL as a requirement is happening on huge, lot of organizations has a less number of SQL administrator teams. They don't have time to find the issues. They would be focusing on application or a database usability, but the time to find or troubleshooting some of the issues might be very less, which is one major thing where they couldn't able to find out why an issue is actually happening on the database level. And then checking the server capacity. As soon as the users report there is a slowness in the database, the first thing we would check is the server capacity, whether the drives are full or the CPU and memory is almost high. That we would check. And based on all these three, we would be able to find a fix. So what happens with this traditional approach is something like increases the mean time to recovery, because the incident is already happened for the end user. This approach cannot be done on a production environment. Okay? So we have to create a test environment, and we have to debug by replicating the same scenarios. That is how an administrator, a SQL administrator, can find out the root cause of this issue. So this will result in poor end user experience, and the mean time to recovery is always high. So how to troubleshoot this type of scenarios is something like you need a powerful solution that can provide you the list of sessions which are blocked, the queries which are slowing down your application, the database, and you need to also get a full stack view on which application executed which transaction, which in turn initiated a specific query that is creating a slowness. That is how the analysis should be. And you need a powerful solution to find why these sessions are logged or logged for a prolonged period of time, and find a way to clear it from the solution itself. So with Application Manager, we will be able to find session lock or block. So this is one such example where you can find which user initiated this session block, and how much time, what is the block duration, memory, CPU involved on it. So if as a SQL administrator, if I need to kill this session, I need not go to the SQL management studio or connect to the database to kill it. So I can kill it from the applications manager tool itself. So this is one such way on how you can troubleshoot this type of blocking issues. We not only show the user level information, we also show the query level information, which is initiating this block. Now, so we discussed about the digital experience monitoring, hybrid cloud monitoring, and how to optimize your database performance. So we are almost in the end of today's session. So I'm just going to show you why Applications Manager is a solution on what you need actually. So this tool is mainly focusing on customer satisfaction. So as I said, we are in the Gartner MQ for continuously on 9th year right now. And we are in Gartner's Customer Choice Award for 2019, 20, and even 2021, we have won it. So even is it going to be a smaller requirement that might improve your business, we would be able to take it up and see how best we can deliver it. So customer satisfaction is key role for our Manage Engine. And then we have the AI ML powered full stack monitoring solution like Applications Manager. So my colleague Suresh mentioned about OpManager Plus and how things integrate with that. So Application Manager is available as a single standalone edition, or it can be integrated as a plugin with your existing OpManager Plus. So you don't need to switch between multiple UIs to see what is happening in your environment. So you can have OpManager Plus as a single solution, and with which you can drill down to Application Manager to find out the application and your infrastructure monitoring. And then the product is cost effective, so it is value for money. So all the IT OEM solutions are available in different scaling options, and the pricing is very open, and you can go to our store to find the product price. And finally, all these products are in-house developed by Zoho Corporation. So these are not acquired tools. So these are inbuilt, and it is in the market for almost 10, 12 years. So the development, testing, support, marketing, everything is done by Zoho. If any of your organization prefers made in India, then this will be a right choice for you. So some of the information about our Applications Manager product. So if you feel you need to take a look at the our YouTube channel, or if you feel you need to download help documents or reach support, you can very well make use of this. Of course, we will share this presentation in the form of PDF once the session is over. And I really thank everyone for joining this session. Wish you a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.